On today's plate of history beans, I'll dish up a little information about the Civil War and more specifically about how battle-torn communities were often forced to deal with the dead bodies and injured soldiers following massive battles during that war. It's no secret that a lot of Americans died in the Civil War. Most historians put that number at around 620,000. Roughly 360,000 on the Union side and 260,000 on the Confederate side. What happened when the fighting ended and hundreds and sometimes thousands of corpses were left behind for locals to deal with? The Civil War remains the deadliest American war. We lost just over 400,000 in World War II and around 300,000 died during World War I, though almost half of those were from influenza. A soldier in the Civil War was 13 times more likely to die than a soldier in the Vietnam War. That's a lot of heroes, and in the case of the Civil War, a lot of unknown soldiers. In all of the wars consequent to the Civil War, we had increasingly efficient systems for the recovery of and burial of men who died in combat. During the Civil War, however, no such systems existed. Our nation's experiences with war were limited to the Revolutionary War and War of 1812. Around 40,000 men combined died in those wars, but those deaths were spread over a much greater period, and there weren't any battles to rival the horrors of the Civil War. Several factors contributed to the high number of casualties in the Civil War. First, the battles were enormous. Over 160,000 men fought at Gettysburg. Around 50,000 of that number were killed or wounded so badly they would never fight again. You can calculate the odds of coming out of that mess unscathed. Not good. Military technology took a leap forward during the Civil War, adding to the slaughter. Soldiers on both sides carried musket rifles as opposed to smooth-bore muskets. Rifling, in case you don't know, improves the range and accuracy of handheld weapons. Gatling guns, crude machine guns of the time, and inspired fear in Confederate forces. They were used primarily by the Union Army, but weren't widely used. Field artillery and improved battle tactics also added to the chaos. Improvements in communication and transportation also led to more carnage during the Civil War. Civil War historians often point to General William Tecumseh Sherman's skillful management of railroads to supply his army during his Blitz campaign into the South, the military action that ultimately ended the war. Employing around 110 rail cars and a rotating circuit of 3 trains to and from supply depots in Pennsylvania and Maryland, Sherman kept his army of around 100,000 fresh and well supplied for 9 months. The campaign culminated with Sherman's famous March to the Sea, where 60,000 Union soldiers broke the back of the Confederacy as they rampaged from Atlanta to Savannah in November and December of 1864. All of which leads me to the premise of today's plate of history beans. What happened after the battles ended and bodies lay strewn across fields and armies dispersed in flight or pursuit? Following a battle in the Civil War, battlefields were often littered with bodies. What happened with those dead and wounded, as often as not, fell to the local citizenry? As an example of what I'm talking about, I'll turn again to the Battle of Gettysburg. Following that massive face-off between Northern and Southern forces, the Confederate Army withdrew with Union forces in pursuit. They left behind around 7,000 dead and another 20,000 wounded for a town of 2,500 to deal with. It's hard to imagine what the days following the Battle of Gettysburg must have been like for the residents of the town of Gettysburg. Homes, churches, public houses, fields, Everywhere in the surrounding area must have resembled a woefully undersupplied and understaffed field hospital. Dead bodies lay everywhere, with even more wounded scattered amongst the dead. Some Union Army personnel remained, but most of the work fell upon women, old men, boys, and little girls, and in some cases able-bodied men, though many of them weren't at home thanks to the war. Those first hours and days must have felt like a nightmare. Gradually, over the course of weeks, wounded were transported away, died or recovered, and shallow graves for the dead were dug. During that time, wild pigs and other animals feasted upon corpses that lay scattered over a roughly 10-mile radius. Even after soldiers were buried, most of them in shallow, 3-foot-deep mass graves, animals continued to unearth the corpses. Some of the horrors of the situation continued for months and even years after the battle ended. This same situation would play out in other places across the nation to varying degrees over the next 4 years. Battles with massive numbers of dead and wounded and locals left to clean things up. It's an aspect of war that is seldom spoken of, but must have made for difficult times. There was also the problem of identifying soldiers. In some cases, identification was easy, but soldiers in the Civil War didn't wear dog tags. Identification was often impossible. Soldiers were identified by items they carried. Bibles, especially pocket-sized soldiers' Bibles, often served as a means of identifying a fallen warrior. Unfortunately, even if a soldier could be identified, record-keeping was haphazard. A large percentage of dead during the Civil War fell into the ranks of the unknown. As I've already noted, most fallen soldiers were placed initially into shallow, unmarked mass graves. Initially, in many cases, there was no effort made to inform family. Over the next couple of decades, there were attempts by folks in both the North and South to unearth these burial sites and relocate bodies to their homes. That process was never fully completed, however. Civil War battlefields became grave sites, and in many cases remain so today. Over the past 150 years, around 16,000 Civil War soldiers have been relocated to Arlington Cemetery in Virginia. Arlington Cemetery has various sections dedicated to memorializing Civil War heroes. Perhaps the most notable is the Tomb of the Civil War Unknowns, which contains the remains of 2,111 Northern and Southern soldiers. Section 27 of Arlington provides a final resting spot for around 5,000 unknown soldiers, including some of the first men buried at Arlington in 1864. A large percentage of Civil War soldiers at Arlington remain nameless. In terms of human tragedy, it's hard to imagine the suffering caused by the Civil War for people at the time. Like any war or great conflict, the number of stories that will never be told stretches the imagination. It is a wonder, even now, over 150 years later, our society still hasn't fully come to terms with the impact of the conflict that ended slavery. We can at least celebrate that aspect of the Civil War, though I think perhaps work remains to be done. I'd love to hear your comments about what you think on the topic. The Civil War and the end of slavery, in my opinion, are some of the most compelling aspects of the Old West. Like I say, I'd love to hear your opinion. That's it for today's plate of History Beans. As always, if you like my content, I hope you'll take a moment to hit those like and subscribe buttons. I would be truly grateful. If you want to know more about the Civil War, I'll recommend a couple of books in the notes below. I'll also have a link to my author's page on Amazon. If you like to read, give one of my books a try. I'd so appreciate it. Now it's time for chapter 29 from my novel Hunting Charm, A Tall Tree and Some Rope. Chapter 29, A Tall Tree and Some Rope. 3 days after her death, Theo buried his wife. The funeral, an event attended by over 200 friends, employees, business associates, and other locals, felt endless. Crying women followed by silent husbands crept by Ruth's coffin, where Theo sat alongside, drinking openly from a metal flask. The mourners traveled at a snail's pace, mumbling platitudes and other kind expressions, some offering a hand, eyes seeking his approval. After the first few, he could no longer bring himself to respond with anything beyond a mumbled thank you or a nod. After the line of mourners, the preacher droned on about Ruth's contributions to the community, the book club, the ladies' auxiliary, the holiday food bank, contributions to the local hospital, and money given to the church. The overweight pastor, a preening man with voluminous curling hair, paused and gave him a long, significant look. Theo realized the agreed-upon time had come for him to speak. Unfortunately, he hadn't given much thought to what he might say, and barely managed 2 minutes of drunken nonsense about how he couldn't have done any of it without Ruth, which was true. They left the church for the cemetery, where a second line composed of the same well-wishers passed again, shaking his hand, or in the case of many of the women, embracing him. Each of the earnest mourners mumbled with minor variations the same cliched condolences. Again he felt nothing, no grief or regret, only a vague sense of anger and bone-deep weariness. Once again he barely acknowledged any of them. There was nothing to be said. Ruth was gone. Following the funeral back at home, he stumbled to his bedroom, finished off the flask of whiskey, and collapsed onto his bed. A cool breeze through the window, in combination with the shade of a tall oak near the house, allowed him to doze and sleep comfortably through the afternoon. He awoke after dark, disoriented, and for a long moment, uncertain why he felt so sad. He fumbled around for a full 30 seconds before finding the box of lucifers. Lighting his lamp, he felt it must be late, the middle of the night, but after locating his watch, found it was only 8 p.m. He wobbled downstairs and found a plate with a cold steak and some beans in the kitchen. The house girl's note apologized for the meal, offered condolences, and said if he needed anything, she would be in her room atop the carriage house. He settled on the sofa and tried the steak, but had no appetite. Instead, he stared at Ruth's chair, her bottles of laudanum and strong liquor still perched on the table. He considered a trip to the pennyback. Delilah would be a comfort, but propriety demanded at least one night of mourning, so he wandered back upstairs. Before returning to his room, he stopped at Ruth's doorway, then entered and seated himself on her bed. They had shared the room for years. He stretched out, feeling both out of place and at home. Laying there, looking up at the ceiling, the realization that Ruth was gone, that there would be no opportunity to heal the separation that had grown between them over the past few years, struck him, and for a few minutes he felt a profound sense of grief and cried. He woke there early the next morning but didn't rise. In the distance, a pair of roosters dueled, crowing back and forth for several minutes while small birds twittered noisily outside, bumping against the eaves, fluttering and bickering. He thought he might return to his own room for more sleep, but after tossing about for another half hour, decided to rise. The aroma of frying bacon wafted up the staircase, something he had forgotten. His room, or what had become his room, located on the west end, was isolated from the rest of the house and shielded by distance from any sounds or smells coming from downstairs. He shuffled downstairs and sat at the dining table, still in his best suit from Ruth's funeral. The girl arrived with coffee and the newspaper. "When I finish breakfast, I'll have a bath," Theo said. "Yes, sir." The girl spoke in a nearly inaudible voice. Theo thought that with Ruth gone he might want a new wife. He looked at the house girl. She was attractive, but too mousy for his tastes. Besides, what interest would a girl have in a man of his years? "Did you fix biscuits?" he asked, thumbing through the paper. "Yes, sir." "Speak up," he grumbled. "When a person speaks, you should be able to hear what they're saying." "Yes, sir." The volume of her delivery didn't increase, but Theo didn't bother scolding a second time. Instead, he looked absently at the headlines. He had lost track of the days, planning the funeral, dealing with visitors, gifts, flowers, food, and tepid consolations had consumed nearly a week. The previous afternoon, on the ride home from Ruth's funeral, Claude Hallam had assured him that matters at work were well in hand and that Theo need not come in any time soon. Theo knew Hallam could run the stockyards indefinitely. For a moment he thought he might visit a local cafe where he often spent part of the morning sipping coffee and smoking with 3 or 4 retirees that frequented the place. He then recalled how he had asked the girl to heat water for a bath and decided the blowhards would be fine on their own. Indeed, he thought absently, he wouldn't care if he never saw the pack of self-important jackasses again. Maybe he would just hole up in the house indefinitely, grow a beard, and take up painting, writing, or some other nonsense. He thought once more about his notion of leaving in search of Doreen and realized that was what he wanted to do. It wouldn't take much planning. Claude Hallam, meticulous and honest to a fault, could run his affairs with a simple power of attorney. Perhaps he should do what he had been thinking of doing for years and simply hand the entire thing over to Claude. After more coffee and a large breakfast, biscuits slathered with sawmill gravy, slices of thick bacon, and 3 fried eggs, he took a leisurely bath and decided he would go to the stockyards. That afternoon his lawyer would draft the necessary papers, giving Claude control. He would have to pay his stolid clerk a bit more, but it didn't matter. There was a more pressing matter to consider. He now believed Ruth had been correct. Doreen was alive somewhere. He bristled at the notion that his daughter might be working as a prostitute, but couldn't help recalling how Doreen herself had, on several occasions, boasted that she could leave at any time and make a good living at the oldest profession. In retrospect, he felt a bit foolish for trusting Bucky Baylor's claim that the Fat brothers had found Doreen's remains and buried her in Indian Territory. The fact that Bucky Baylor had left town after the death of his brother supported the notion that the obese twins lied. Theo considered sending someone out after Bucky, but realized the futility of such an act. His time and energies would be better spent searching for Doreen. That afternoon, Hal Pearson, a local lawyer, bookish and bespectacled, assured Theo that power of attorney over payroll and accounts payable would be drawn up and executed the next day. An hour later, Theo sat down in Claude's office to discuss his plans. "I'm leaving to find my little girl. Ruth told me she thought those Fat brothers lied about Doreen being dead. I believe she was right. I also plan to find Johnson and see him hanged." "Yes, sir." Hallam knew that Theo had toyed with the idea of leaving in search of his daughter. "You'll be in charge, Claude. We'll change your title, and on top of that, you'll get a piece of the pie, 10%. Instead of manager, we'll call you head of operations or some such. Call yourself whatever the hell you please." I don't reckon anyone is going to care one way or another what I'm called." Theo paused for a long moment, then said, "Do you think I'm acting like a fool, riding off like a cowboy in a dime novel?" Hallam thought for a moment, then said, "Some folks are likely to say you've lost your senses. A man's daughter goes missing and his wife dies suddenly. Those are likely to drive a man to act foolishly. Still, who gives a damn? I might do the same if I were in your place." Theo nodded. As usual, Hallam gave sound advice. "I'll need a few men, not just some idiots from the stockyards," he said. "We can find some men, but it may take a week or two. Get on it right away. I'd like to be on the trail in 10 days. What if I string up that mule rancher? Do you imagine that would be a problem with emancipation and all? I wouldn't advertise it, but I've heard tell of similar actions without consequence. Not many folks care about a colored boy. All I'd need is a tall tree and some rope." "Yes, sir." Claude, pragmatic and non-judgmental to a fault, nodded in agreement. 10 days later, Theo Tarwater, with 5 men, including a famous hired killer from New Orleans named Francois Martin, rode south from Abilene. In the days leading up to his departure, Theo had grown increasingly obsessed with revenge. It didn't matter that he felt Doreen was still alive, as men are prone to do. When Theo decided to hunt and kill Cecil Johnson, he set about inventing reasons to justify his dark intent. It didn't take him long to convince himself his sinister rage was righteous. The change in Theo was especially notable to Claude Hallam. "Theo ain't near the same," Claude remarked to his wife one evening. "He always had a temper, but since Doreen ran off and Ruth passed, there's a meanness about him. I don't know how to describe it exactly." Claude sipped his iced tea reflectively. "Theo never seemed beholden to his anger in the past, but I've seen hate grow in him these past weeks." "Suffering can do that, especially to those unaccustomed to hard times," Claude's wife said. Claude had to admit he felt a sense of relief when Theo and his band of ruffians left town. Before they rode out, the stockyard supervisor reminded his boss of the directions Bucky Baylor had given regarding the Johnson ranch. "Travel south into Indian Territory following the Shawnee Trail. 7 days out, look for a pair of low-lying hills to the west. Ride that direction and it should take you to Johnson's place." "We'll find it," Theo growled in response. "I'll know when the man who raped my little girl is nearby." Hallam dared not suggest that Doreen might not have been raped by Cecil Johnson. The new Theo would brook no disagreement. Claude's father, a staunch believer in the use of the proverbial rod to avoid spoiling the child, had beaten him so regularly that, out of self-preservation, Claude had adopted a firm belief in the biblical adage that claims a calm word blunts anger. Claude didn't stand up to bullies. He let them win and counted that as a win for himself. Matters at the stockyards required his attention, and any other concerns would be sorted out on Judgment Day.